Hey everyone, welcome to the Mineral Identification Lab within the online version of Geology 101 at Mid-Michigan College. Wanted to give you a quick little walkthrough of how this lab works and give you kind of the lay of the land. The online Mineral Identification Lab actually exists within Moodle. So once you're in your weekly sheets, you go down to Weekly Lab for minerals. You're going to see the access from the Mineral Lab link. So go ahead and click on that link, and you will be directed over to this Geology Lab online. There's a ton of information inside this lab, and I would highly recommend that you read this multiple times through. Make sure that you understand the different topics, but basic general overview of minerals, identifying the 5 criteria to be considered a mineral. Then we jump down into the different mineral groups, silicates, non-silicates. Then we'll talk a little bit about mineral properties and what those mean, different types of crystals and crystal forms, luster, color, some mineral tests, streak, hardness, cleavage, fracture, specific gravity, and then there's some other properties that exist within some minerals. They're not the most distinctive properties, so we typically don't use those a ton, but there are a few that make sense. Some smell like rotten eggs, others are actually magnetic, and then others are reactive to different types of acid, hydrochloric acid, HCl. So want you to become very familiar with this page because this first part is actually the key. It gives you the guidance on how you will work through the different minerals within the online version. This is not the physical rock or mineral samples that you have in front of you that you purchase from the bookstore. This is just the online lab that we're talking about right now. So when you come down, get all the way down here to the bottom, you're going to start to see these different links that we have here. So for example, the mineral identification flowchart here. Just a quick, simple flowchart that tells you and helps you through the identification of these things, mineral groups, silicates, cleavage shapes, directions, etc., etc. But the really important one to point out is this mineral ID sheet, and it says fill this out and then submit with your assignment in the Moodle shell. So when you open that up, you'll actually be greeted with something that looks like this. It'll give you the opportunity to make a copy of that. Go ahead and do that, put that in your Google Drive. And you'll go ahead and notice that when we're talking about these sample 1, which by the way is questions 1 through 3. When you get to sample 2, it's questions 4 through 6. We're looking for you to identify streak color, hardness, cleavage, anything else other that you would think that would really be important. What's the luster, metallic or non-metallic? What's the color? And then what is your best educated guess of what that sample is? What is the name of that sample? So make sure that you fill out this completely. And then you're going to have a copy of that in your Google Drive. What you'll then do is you'll go ahead and submit that copy to us. Again, if you follow that direction, fill this out and then submit with the assignment in the Moodle shell. So you may be asking, where do these answers, how do I get these answers? Well, down here there's 2 quizzes. The first is a quiz yourself, which is just a really great opportunity for you to go through and be asked different questions about minerals. It may ask you the 5 different characteristics of a mineral. It may say more definitions of, what is the difference between fracture, what is cleavage, what is a metallic versus a non-metallic, things like that. This is just a quiz to make sure that you understood the chunk of the content here. But this sample identification is actually where you're going to spend a lot of your time. So if you go ahead and you click on that sample identification, you'll have a button here to say attempt. I've already done one, but I'm going to go ahead and continue. This is where we get right back to it. So remember when we were looking at that mineral ID sheet and we said sample 1, questions 1 through 3? Well, this is sample 1, and these are questions 1 through 3. So if I go through this, I can see this is my sample. It's what it looks like, so it gives me the appearance. What's the streak? Well, the streak is white. The hardness is a 6.0. The degrees of cleavage is 2 at 90 degrees. So we can see that. There's 1, there's 2. And then other properties, stringers or inclusions present. So you'll know what these things are if you read through. But there's an inclusion right there that I can see. And so then also type of luster, is it metallic or non-metallic? It's a non-metallic, right? So I've gone ahead and I've worked through these. I've been using these different identification sheets that are then also linked in here. And I've selected all of these answers that I possibly could. I go ahead and take a guess based on these classification sheets in terms of what I think this mineral might be. All of these answers, as you work through them, you're recording on this sheet. And the reason why that's really important is that when we go back to the final portion of this lab and we take a look at the lab, when we jump into the Unit 1, weeks 2 through 6, and we look down here for the minerals lab, here is our assignment for the minerals lab. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to upload our submission down here where we have a chance. You'll want to go ahead and either link to this sheet, or when you're in these sheets, the other way that would be great is if you were just simply download it as a PDF and then submit that file. Makes life a lot easier for everybody. Gives us the ability to give you some pointed feedback and some grading directly on within Moodle. If you don't do that, then I would highly, highly, highly recommend that when you are finished and you go to share, you actually share it with Mr. Miller and myself. So go ahead and put both of our names in there. And we will, there we go. We'll be able to then make comments on here for you and make them directly in line. You'll then share this link inside the submission form as well. So you can go ahead and copy that link. And then when you go to submit your assignment in Moodle, you'll click that button and you'll just copy and paste that link in there. Hope that helps. Gives you a little sample lay of the land here. If you have questions, make sure you put them into the weekly discussion board and we will make sure to get those back. Also, I will encourage you and remind you when you're working through the Mineral Lab, when you're on those specific mineral identifications in this portion, spelling does count. So make sure that you get the spelling correct and double check those. If you're having problems, go ahead and post and we'll make sure to get back to you. Thanks so much.